Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I am your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and we are back in the... Are we officially in the dead of summer, or do we have to wait for OTAs to end before we're in the dead of summer?
If we're not on the dead, we are on the life support of summer, I think, because the little drips and drabs of information we get from OTAs is really just like, we're in a fetal position. We are there is a pulse, but not much. I mean, this is
the Bob Barker of summer.
Yeah, which is fine because with the schedule of everything else going on, we have NBA and finals and Stanley Cup. Baseball is really getting into it and everything. So it's okay that it's a little slow right now. But I'll tell you something, in about 2 weeks when basketball and hockey are over, we're going to really start clamoring for some football news because
baseball sucks.
Well, maybe unless you're a Rays fan, it sucks. But for me, I'm pretty happy. Good week this week, though, Grump. I did a rare doubleheader. I did Wrigley Field and Fenway Park.
It's such a random collection of parks.
Very well. It's just the Rays had this weird road trip, and it just worked out to go to all of it. So, yeah, I will say though, after doing the taste test, that Wrigley is better than Fenway, pretty hands down. It is the essence of a retro ballpark and just cool. It just feels like you're in 1943. Fenway's a piece of shit. It's goofy. The fans there are dopes. They're cheesy. I'll take Fenway over. I'll take Wrigley over Fenway any day.
Camden Yards is a newer stadium that's modeled after Wrigley, right? To make it look like it's old. Is that correct?
Right. Camden Yards was the first of the retro parks, so a lot of these have now brick and steel and quirkiness in the outfield, but they're all like Epcot. They're when I do I've been to 28 of the 30 baseball stadiums, and I have my ranking, which I manicure and I refine every year, and I don't have Wrigley and Fenway on my list because it's not fair, because they are the actual old parks that are left. Number one, by the way, is Pittsburgh, for those of you who are looking for.
It is a good stadium. I was there twice last year.
It is number one in my list. I have San Diego 3, San Francisco 2, Pittsburgh 1. So
that is with the rivers right there. It's super cool.
It's really awesome. You walk over the bridge to go like from downtown, the Roberto Clemente Bridge.
Or if you're me, you can take a scooter, like one of those electric scooters that you pay like a fucking ride share through an app or whatever. And
Yep.
They will turn off if you ride them places that you're not supposed to have them. Found that out.
Yeah, that's like a golf cart. If you go off where you're supposed to go, they'll shut off on you.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know where I was going. I was following my friend who decided to cut through a park, and we're like, he's like, "Hey, my thing died." I was like, "Yeah, me too."
Now they have a casino next door, the Rivers Casino, so it's perfect.
And there's bars right next door, like across the street too. It's like kind of just like an open street thing there.
Well, it's fantastic because we went to the Giant game when they played Pittsburgh in 2008. It was during that Rays World Series, and we went for. And I just remember the two things that stood out for me for Pittsburgh was Saturday night at 11:30 on one of the TV channels. They had like basically a Jeopardy show, but it was about Steelers. They had 3 Steeler fans answering questions. So I was like, this is cool. And Sunday morning, getting to the tailgating spot at like 7 in the morning and it already being packed. I don't mean a bunch of cars. I mean packed. It was awesome. Giants winning also was pretty nice too. That was a nice touch for the weekend as well. So
Pittsburgh is a pretty badass sports town, I gotta say.
It's a very underrated city, I think. I think
where it is now versus where it was like 15 years ago when I went is two very different cities.
Sure. I would say Pittsburgh and Detroit are my 2 underrated cities, where you have a perception of what they are and you'll be like, oh, pretty fun.
Yeah,
pretty good.
How about that?
Yeah.
OTAs are fun. Giants OTAs. And I say that somewhat sarcastically, but also somewhat, truthfully. OTAs are fun, but they're not super informative. So this is like, this is not the dead of summer. This is cocktease season. This is, you get pictures of guys making catches against air and in shorts. O linemen don't even touch D linemen. D linemen don't even need to show up.
Grump talking about cock teases and guys running around in shorts.
There you go. That's classic Just Giants for you.
It's all you need, man.
It's been kind of our MO. It's just veiled stupid jokes. I mean, but really, this is like, I've been really quiet on Twitter. I've been reading the stuff, been listening to the stuff. Everybody's cool. Everybody's, working hard. They're really interested. It's an interesting time. It's an exciting time. This is OTAs are always exciting time. Everyone's at the height of their fandom after the draft and that first wave of free agency, and now you're seeing them. It happens so quickly. I mean, it's like 3 weeks later, and you have like the mini camp is already over, and they're heading towards OTAs. And now the whole team is getting together, and you're riding high from the successes of last year, and it is already a fairly fun time to be a football team when you have been irrelevant for 8, 9, 10, 11 years, kinda, and then all of a sudden you have a good season with not just like out of the blue, but like with hope, there's like at a good time where they can continue to build, and this just hits overdrive, and people are excited for everything.
Well, let's start by asking you, Grump. I mean, how do you, as a Giant fan, how do you compare this offseason to anything we've had since we've been doing this show, and even before that? I mean, to kind of say what you're saying, for me, this is the first. I don't dread the off seasons, but you go into it like in the last several years, like, all right, when is this rebuild really going to start taking hold? When are we going to get some identity? But now I actually feel it's like, it's not, while we are still rebuilding, now I'm looking at schedules. I'm thinking about what can we do to get to the next round of the playoffs, and you want this. This is the most I've wanted the season to start sooner in a very, very, very long time.
It's interesting, man. So we've historically, since this show started, not had success to back off of, with the exception of the very first year we did this. Mm-hmm. We started this in 2017, riding off of that 2016 season where they had only 4 losses in the regular season, 4 or 5.
I think it was 5.
Well, they finished in second place in the NFC, beating they missed out to the Cowboys, who they did beat twice that year or
That's
something,
correct.
right? And they just had a worse record. We were riding high, and I remember the feeling of wanting to do the show very badly at that time because it was infuriating. That was a team that's offense was bad, and they just continued to win anyway.
Right.
And I mean, I just remember the frustration of people just being like very okay with everything. They were like, we're winning. And the part of me that was just like, no, you're missing the bigger picture. They're not doing well. Like, this is cool, and I'm enjoying this and whatever, but like there are serious problems with this team.
A very big parallel to all you guys that are Knicks fans. Also, the year they made the playoffs with Carmelo Anthony, it was like, okay, we're happy we're in the playoffs and we feel like we're doing things because we're in the playoffs. But I never felt like either team, that Giant team or that Knicks team, were really building to anything big. It was just like, we made the playoffs, exciting, but this isn't the start of something more sustainable and bigger, which I feel like right now.
Well, I don't know if I 100% agree with that. From the day one, never really felt the Ben McAdoo thing. So, I mean, that was certainly sticking in my throat. Didn't like that. That being said, the defense, the defense that year was really something. And it did feel like, while they were not at that time building, it was like, okay, well, they need points. They need something to help this offense out, and they've got a team. And if I remember right, 2017 is the year they went out and they bought like 100 wide receivers. And then in like 2 games, all of them had torn ACLs. And the whole season literally fell down the toilet.
Yeah.
And then, before the end of the year, we've got Eli is benched. Ben McAdoo's fired. Steve Spagnuolo's interim head coach. Jerry Reese gets fired. Mark Ross gets fired. And we're in a whole other hole. And we never fully climbed out of that hole. And I would say even at certain points dug a little deeper.
Well, that's what I meant. It was like, we made the playoffs, but like Eli, the clock was ticking, and, like it was going to be like Custer's last stand. So I didn't
It
feel
very
like
much was like that.
exactly. Like I didn't feel like this was the beginning of a run. I felt like this was just we've made the playoffs. We are going to probably at the cost of a run make one final effort to win with this guy, and it all backfired, and it set us back for a while. This I feel, I feel like this is a unified front between front office, head coach, owner, the right mix of young guys that are going to grow with this team and grow with this coaching staff. This feels like the start of an era. Now, I don't mean this to say the start of a Super Bowl era, but an era of a team where there's going to be some sustained success over X amount of years. What that ceiling is to be determined, because I don't think we're not really close to having all the parts that we need for it. But this feels like the start of something. That's a difference for me.
Well, what I'll say is, in terms of excitement, like I said, that the first year we did those OTAs, I will genuinely say that while I didn't think they were building towards anything, I certainly felt like as a team they kind of had something that they could throw money at and fix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that being said, the big difference towards building towards something versus having something is this feels like they went out, they got the GM that they truly wanted from the get-go. They interviewed other people, but they got the guy they wanted, who brought the coach that they wanted, and the kind of coach they wanted, an innovative young offensive mind. What happened before felt like not a handoff so much as it was like, I don't know, kind of, have you ever like dropped something in the slowest possible way where you keep trying to catch it and you're just bouncing it around for 20 minutes?
It's like you had a really good movie and the sequel was like a direct-to-video thing. It was like, it's sort of it, but not really. It's a half-ass effort to keep it.
It was like this just janky multi-step process of letting Tom Coughlin walk, promoting the young offensive mind, but like even that felt like, well, we don't want Philly to have him, so let's do this.
It felt like a cock block more. It felt like stuff that Philly does. Yeah.
But also, like, I do think that to a certain extent, Ben McAdoo represented something they wanted. I think it's more like, think of like the music industry in the 80s, where like you have your hair band and like record companies are like, that's what we want that's what sells, and so they get something that sort of looks like it, and then you wind up with like Stryper.
And then what happens is the rest of the music industry all of a sudden moves on to Nirvana and Pearl Jam, and all of a sudden your label's coming out with the next Poison album, and it's like, well, nobody wants to hear that anymore. And that's kind of like what we were for a long time. We were Poison in a world of Nirvanas. and now we finally have, a Kurt Cobain.
Alice in Chains.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Soundgarden,
Mm-hmm.
So this is probably the most genuinely excited I feel. I actually still feel a little bit tenuous because there is some level of connection I feel to riding high on quick success that is a little bit fluky. Right? I mean, do you feel like
Sure.
So the difference between 2022 and 2016 as teams go is 2016 was an expensive team that spent a lot of money on defense, and predictably the defense was good and the offense was bad. The 2022 team had like already spent money that was invested in things that they were forced to keep. Think Kenny Golladay for starters. They had sunk money they couldn't do anything with, and they still won anyway, despite doing things such as moving on from Kadarius Toney, which, say whatever you want, it's still a first-round draft pick talent that they decided they were just going to figure out how to do it without him. And they still managed to make it work. They had Kenny Golladay, who was making more money than anybody on the team, I think, and he barely even got snaps, and they still managed to make it work. So
it's either him or Leonard Williams with the two highest, right?
Yeah, it's got to be one of those two.
Yeah.
So the difference for me is, while the offseason feels like they are sort of throwing money at the obvious problems that prevented the immediate success from the prior year from being more than that, there's a parallel, but the difference being that immediate success, one won in spite of certain things, and the other won because of financial spending.
It feels to me they spent money, but like not recklessly at the the cost of the future.
Well, there's
Where
that too. Yeah.
yeah, they were really in a, again, a Custer's last stand. Like, we have to win this before Eli, and the ownership felt like they owed it to Eli to do so, which is kind of odd considering they already won 2 Super Bowls. I mean, this wasn't John Elway in 1997 where it's like we got to win one for John, but ownership felt like they owed Eli to give him one last run, which is a little weird. And
yeah, we can get into the merits and pitfalls of that. I mean, like, to be honest, they screwed Eli for a million years. For a very long stretch of time, they put Eli in situations where he was the entire team, and they did not do a good job of helping him. And so maybe I think they truly understood that and realized that and felt the guilt from that. You look at their track record of avoiding the offensive line, and then in like 2 years, they threw everything at Justin Pugh and Weston Richburg, and like suddenly at the very end, they're like trying their best to like just put it together for him.
Right.
And they failed.
But it felt like we were gonna have a 2-year window. We are gonna do everything we can to win right now. Be damned after the fact.
Yeah.
And I don't feel any of these moves we're doing now are. Now this is for building sustainability, which is, very critical in this league because it's so up and downy, and you can get yourself into cap trouble really, really quickly.
Yeah. And, bringing this back to like the OTA thing here, this is the time of year where all teams and fans of all teams like wet their pants over one-handed catches and things like that. And so it's very easy to get wrapped up in that. In the Giants case, I mean, there's a picture going around of Daniel Bellinger making a catch, and he has guns like the you son of a bitch from Predator. You know what I'm talking about?
Wow.
You know what I'm talking about, though?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like that, and even I kind of just made a joke out of it, but it is even silly things like that get you excited after a year like that. But I'm feeling an undercurrent of like I feel like last season never ended for me totally. Like that Eagles game was kind of like a setup. Like we had no shot. I was excited for it, but like, I was riding high off that Minnesota thing. I thought we were doing good. And the Eagles game is just kind of like, I mean, that's not even fair. We're not going to win that game, but I know we can keep it. So like, it feels like I'm just like waiting for the next season to start to like give me another shot at it. I'm ready to go, I
mean, now we are almost 5 months removed from that game, which is hard to believe in itself. But I think looking back now with some distance, that game was probably very helpful for the development of this team going forward because, we had beaten Minnesota. We were a second-round team in the playoffs, but we said it ad nauseum on this show that we are in a rebuild, and it was going to take a couple of years to do. And I think, not only getting our asses kicked, but it was just obvious watching that game with your own eyes that we are not Philly.
Right.
We're not Philly yet, and that was a good taste to leave. And forget the fans, Mike Kafka's, the coaching staff, the front office, ownership of like, great story, great year, great run, but there is still a lot of work to do and a lot of decisions have to be made if we want to get up to this level because at the end of the day, the name of the game is championships. It's not, not having wasted years. It's not, winning games at home. It's not getting into the playoffs. The goal is to win championships. And there is, as much as we hate it because we hate that team 90 miles to the south of us, they are one of the gold standards in this league right now, and we are not at their level yet. Now,
yeah, I think that's really well said. I think you're right. I think it helps the team to be able to congratulate yourselves and pat yourselves on the back palpably, right, with the win over Minnesota. And then also at the same time be reminded, by the way, this is the bar. So, yeah, I think you're right. And it's one of those things where you can look back at a year and be like, we did damn good. That was damn good. But we got work to do still. Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of things went our way to have the record that we did, and that's fine. But something good. It's easier to rebuild and easier, to do things when you are being successful and there's a better attitude from the owner's suite down to the trainer. And last year could have been a very, very difficult year first year, new coaching staff, new philosophies, a make or break year for the quarterback, all of this, roster change. You know, you don't want that first year you just don't want that bad taste in your mouth of like, did we screw up again with this coaching staff? Did we screw up hiring this general manager? Did we, we were able to not have to deal with any of that stuff. So, attitude really helps, and buy-in really helps. And winning early gives you a lot of buy-in from your team. It gives you, praise in the media, because the media will drive the attitude of the fans as much as what they see with their own eyes. And they got a pass for a year, and they got breathing room and a chance to do things and not have to panic. Roll this out the right way.
Amen, man. So, with that said, the Giants have had 7 OTAs thus far. They're mostly walkthroughs. They are truly, if you're being honest, not all that exciting. They just aren't. Yeah. It's easy to get excited, and we're going to. But the honest truth of it is it's just work, man. They're just going to work. They're just doing their thing. They're screwing up. They're trying new things. And I want to get into that, right? So we're going to go through this depth chart really quickly. And I kind of want to start on the defensive side. I want to start in the back end, the secondary.
Sure.
And I just want to know what you – so, like, at corner, the Giants went out. They had grabbed Deonte Banks to pair with Adoree Jackson. Banks is getting first-team reps in OTAs, which means dick. But, I mean, we expected that anyway. They've moved Cordell Flott into the slot. I do think Aaron Robinson is still a really good fit there. I don't think Aaron Robinson is a good fit for the outside. On the flip side, I think Cordell Flott is a developmental piece for the outside, but also has some versatility to move around. So on the conversation of versatility, the starting safeties were Bobby McCain, new free agent that they signed, and Nick McLeod. Obviously, Xavier McKinney will be a starting safety, but there is sort of this question as to who's filling that role next to him, whether it's, Jason Pinnock, Dane Belton, a draft pick from last year. Julian Love is gone. They also drafted Javarius Owens, who's kind of more of that box safety type that Julian Love is. Nick McLeod getting reps with safety when he was a cornerback last year in place of Adoree Jackson is interesting to me. And I know people got excited, like, oh, maybe they did it. They found a diamond in the rough. And maybe I'm kind of clowning on people when I shouldn't be. But I think that OTAs is the time where you can experiment with these things. And maybe they're shit ideas,
I think this is the time where if you want to do a little cross-training, you want to do a little experiment, like you said, I think you do it now. I think, as we talk about the depth of the secondary back there, I want people to be prepared that Deonte Banks may struggle as a rookie.
Yes.
Just because he's we traded up for him, he's a first-round pick. We think he has got a nice future with this team. For the most part, rookie cornerbacks struggle in this league.
Usually.
And, be prepared for that. I don't want to hear after week 4, bust pick.
We should have taken Forbes, this guy, that guy.
Yeah. So, I think we have to, and this is going to be the internal struggle of the Giant fan for this year and probably even to next year, as your head should be saying, we are still building this team, but your heart is like, second round playoffs last year. I expect to be closer to a Super Bowl contender this year. And these are the type of things we're going to have to kind of work through, that success is a blessing and a curse. And, this is a very important position of need, but it's not a plug and play. He might come in there and just kick complete ass, but the odds are is going to be a learning curve, and we're going to have to kind of deal with it. So
if I had to guess, I would say I don't think he's going to play badly. I think that this system, Wink Martindale's system, and I'm going to talk about this for a little bit, but I think Wink's system of confusion and tight man coverage and bringing pressure, I think it will allow him to not give up a lot. I think he'll be step for step and quarterbacks will not even look his direction as seeing a possible window. I just don't think, obviously depending on matchup, there might be a really shifty wide receiver right at the release point or something like that, that just they know they have an advantage. But generally speaking, I think that this system will be able to hide some of the bumps and bruises for him. But the thing that it won't hide, and the thing that I think might be a huge struggle for him, I think he might be a little grabby in year one. And I think he might be a little penalized in year one.
Yeah, I think that might be the thing where people get, start chirping a little bit more than getting burnt. Might be just, hey, this guy, he keeps too many holding, defensive pass interference or defensive holding or something where it's just like, they don't have the confidence yet to know that they can run with these guys, and they're going to, try to get any kind of advantage until they, it's as much of a mental thing as it is a physical thing or a technique thing, I think.
Yeah, and it's also a speed of the game thing too. Sometimes it just takes months, years.
And remember, with the other side of Adoree Jackson on the other side, he is probably going to be picked on more just because of the fact that the other side
wants to pick on Adoree.
Yeah, it's like you say, well, no one's going to try to pick on him. It's like, well, where are they going to throw? So, I mean, he's probably going to get more action his way because of Adoree Jackson is there. Now, that's where we kind of need one of the things where we need health in this secondary is that if Adoree Jackson goes down, he's really going to be the glue back there. And it's going to be very important that he stays healthy and does a really good job because we need that rock on that side to help, make it only half of a field as opposed to a full field that teams have to work with.
In regards to Nick McCloud at safety, I think it's a smart, fun idea. Just speaking on Nick McCloud, his filling in for Adoree Jackson last year, I thought was fairly admirable. Obviously there was a drop off there, but it was not what I would have thought it would have been.
Right.
I think honestly that Nick McCloud, as the team has them as an asset, I think he's a good depth corner. I think he's solid, something that you would kind of want, like somebody to come off the bench and not embarrass you. That being said, I think the beauty of this is that Wink's system allows people to kind of move post snap. You know what I mean? Like he can line up as a safety and run maybe some safety plays, but he can also line up as a safety and come down and maybe he's going to cover a corner or something like that. I mean, just maybe defensive backs are just going to move around. Maybe he'll come in on a blitz. The beauty of it is that as long as he's cross-trained to the fact where the quarterback has no idea if he's going to be a safety once the ball is snapped, or if he's going to be a corner once the ball is snapped, or if he's coming in on a blitz once the ball is snapped, it kind of doesn't matter. Like I'm viewing more and more that there's outside corners, there's a true free safety, and then everything else is just a pass coverage guy, whether he be a linebacker or a slot corner or a box safety or something. You can call it whatever you want. The guys in between are interchangeable, and they come in on blitzes sometimes, they cover sometimes they go into zone coverage. I think that it's cool that they're doing this. I will not be shocked if Nick McCloud never lines up as a safety ever in a real game.
And the other thing, too, you have to remember, this is year 2 of this defense, and we have a lot of guys coming back from this defense. Last year was about installation, learning a new defense, which is pretty different than it was before. Now we have guys that, Darnay Holmes, Nick McCloud, Cordell Flott, Xavier McKinney, Adoree Jackson, guys who've been in this system now for a year, and they're going to be more comfortable in it also. So now you can start doing some of this cross. What's that?
Yeah, adding wrinkles.
Yeah. We're not starting from day one of this is my philosophy. Now you can do some cross-training experimentation and little things that may or may not happen, in the regular season. So that's and the fact that we kept, pretty much the whole coaching staff on the defensive side is back, right? Did we lose anybody on the defensive side?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so that continuity, which doesn't happen that often, it's good that we got another year out of everybody at least. So you can kind of continue what we were doing, and I have to take a step back and teach, the fundamentals, what you're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. The foundation's already been set. Now they can really bring Wink's system into the stratosphere. They can really
Correct.
have fun with it and toy around, and I think that they're going to try.
Yeah.
It is also, I think, a credit to the coaching staff for always being on the lookout for new possibilities and new ideas. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
That being said, what are you worried about in the secondary? Are you worried at all from a depth chart perspective? Just safety?
Yeah, safety. If Deontay Banks is struggling, what does that mean? Like, you know, I'm, the way the Giants have been, we've also been conditioned for the last 10 years that the injury bug hits this team and we get very thin very quickly. So I'm still a little PTSD'd from that also. But you really can't control that in early June for injuries that may or may not happen going forward.
I mean, you can't control it really at all.
Yeah, but you can't I am like this. Well, if this guy gets hurt and this guy gets hurt, but I can't logically assume those things are going to happen. I can be afraid of them, but I guess I would say probably safety. I mean, maybe safety might be one of those spots, and we say this all the time, where extra depth may not be on this roster yet, and maybe something when cut down day we pick up somebody that we can plug and play in.
I mean, I think it's also one of those things they might target a starter next year. It might be time in the offseason to either look at a free agent or look at a guy in the draft that they like. I wouldn't have been surprised if there was a safety in this draft early on that they had their sights on, like Brian Branch. Like, I wonder where they were like, if he's here, we got to take him. Everything else be damned. I wonder.
The good thing also, as we're getting into next year, would be year 3 of this regime, is that the number of spots where we'd have to spend big money to really fill is shrinking. Other than and we'll get to this, we talk about offense, a real number 1 wide receiver. If you think about it, the offensive line, we don't have to go out big game fishing for a free agent for offensive line. I don't think we need to do that for defensive line. I think in corners, we'll be okay. So it's really, we can use that money that we'll have next year to kind of fill spots, like, depth things and things, as opposed to having to spend a huge chunk on a glaring need. Because I don't see really, obviously we don't know, in 12 months from now, but right now I don't see glaring needs that this team will have that we have to spend a lot of money on one guy and taking up 11-12% of the cap on.
No, I mean, like, the Andrew Thomas deal is going to smack pretty soon when it happens. That is what it is, though. I mean, like, I would rather pay the left tackle that I trained. You know what I mean? Like, I'm okay with
exactly.
that.
Yeah,
but I think, to your point, their ability to bring in quality free agents on the cheap makes me think that when they do have to pay their player, when the tax man comes, you know what I mean, for Andrew Thomas and whomever else, I know now from what looks to be 2 off seasons at this point that they can go out, get effective players, and not spend more than like $1 million on a guy.
Right.
Which is pretty
and
cool.
use the money for your cornerstones that are already here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I kind of agree with you. I do think safety is a spot that I'm a little worried about, but in the grand scheme of position groups, I don't think really that this team is getting beaten over the top like a ton. It might be famous last words or something, but
I don't think. I mean, everybody gets beat at some point, but I don't see them being sieve that.
Like consistently. I just don't see, like, if safety is your worst problem, like you're like, I'm not really sure who the second safety is on the roster. That's like not the worst problem to have.
Exactly. If I don't know who my first safety is, I'm very concerned. But
sure, yeah.
We're picking nits a little bit now, which is good. That's what we want to do.
I'm a big fan of Okereke. As a linebacker, I think that they're going to continue running a lot of things where he's going to be on the field for 3 downs. And I think also, to his credit, Micah McFadden in spot roles, based on what he was able to do as like a full-time role last year, I think that he'll be effective. And same thing with Jared Davis. I think with just the spot roles where they're going to have a couple snaps per game, or of course, things will be situational based on the team. But like in their minor roles, I think they'll be able to do plenty. And Okereke, I think, completely blurs that line between pass coverage and run down linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
Like I do think he is really that guy. He's not a big thick bodied thumper like a Fred Warner or whatever, but long arms, really athletic, fast, able to play coverage really, really well. And, he's got the speed to come downhill and hit big. So I'm excited about linebacker. My problem for me is just depth there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think also Jared Davis might surprise a little bit because I think, he'll have a whole offseason to really. They brought him in and he basically had to play right away and not completely knowing the system. Now with an offseason, I think
And
he'll
late
be
in
more
the year, too, they got him.
Exactly. So I think, they like him. They wanted to bring him in.
Yeah.
I think you give him an off season where he can, really understand the playbook and, really go through all the reps during OTAs, training camp, all this stuff. I think you're going to see more bang for your buck out of him.
I hope so. I have high hopes for him.
Yeah.
The defensive line, I think we're both pretty comfortable with. They have plenty of beef up there. It might be one of their best position groups with starters this year. But the edge room, how worried about you as the edge rushers? I guess being Azeez Ojulari, Jahad Ward, and Kayvon Thibodeau.
Well, as long as everybody's healthy, I'm going to feel great. I think as soon as one guy goes down, I'm going to be already a little nervous.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're one body away from me feeling a lot better about that position group.
But I mean, how significant of a body are we talking about? Like, if you had to put like this is like a shitty way to do it, but like a draft position on it.
I mean, I'd like to have like a second to high third round pick. I'd like to have.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thing. I like Azeez, I think, more than a lot of people. I think that he does his thing pretty well. But at this point,
Just stay on the field.
yeah, I mean, like, he had a shitty second year. How many games did he miss his first year? Any? Maybe just a handful?
I think he missed a couple the first year.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't remember it being egregious. I think last year was one of those things that felt almost predictable where he just put on so much muscle in such a short period of time that you're like, soft tissue injuries definitely coming for him. And then it was just like one of those things where, like, if he were declared out right at the beginning of the year, it would have been fine. But because it was just like strung along in this forever thing, it felt like he was just like
a little bit of depth chart, a little bit of a drama with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's just human nature. Like, I don't necessarily think the coaching staff did anything wrong with handling him or anything like that. I think it's just like when you're always waiting for something and you have this like glimmer of hope that it's going to come and it doesn't, it feels worse than if right off the bat you're like, it's not happening. Not happening this year. Sorry, you're going to have to wait till next year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried. I am worried that this defense is going to have another year of struggling to create pressure, even with manufacturing it. And I do like Kayvon, and he spoke to the media about not watching his good plays from last year, only watching the bad ones, working on finishing and stuff like that, and that's cool. But to me, Kayvon was always a guy who knew what to say and how to say it. I gotta see it. It, man. So it's cool that he apparently acknowledges it and knows exactly what to say about it. I'm ready to see him close plays. He's going to have to. I would like to see him take over this defensive line this year.
I am more concerned, honestly, about stopping the run than I am about the pass rush on this team.
Okay.
Very, very honestly, I know I need to see some major improvement. I mean, you get off the field by being able to stop the run. That's, stopping the run means it's 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 8 as opposed to 2nd and 4. And it changes everything. It makes it so much easier to, the other team to extend drives and make longer drives and everything. So for me, do you think what we did in the offseason is going to, have a noticeable improvement in stopping the run over what we were last year, which was pretty bad?
I wouldn't say in the edge room. I would say in the defensive line, bringing in Nunez Roches and
Yeah,
Ashawn Robinson, in
I was
addition
trying.
to
I was trying to.
sign Lawrence long term. You've managed to keep Leonard Williams thus far. Yeah, I would say that they were also worried about the run game. I mean, they also drafted another big defensive tackle with Jordan Riley, in addition to last year's DJ Davidson. Although I don't know if he's going to play at all. He had a late season ACL. But yeah, I think the coaching staff certainly thought it was a big problem. Wink Martindale said before last year even started that stopping the run is the number one thing he tries to do. That being said, like, are you still concerned that it's going to be an issue given all that they've done in the offseason, or no?
Still have concerns. I think I want to see it before
Okay.
I feel a lot better. Almost with everything. It's the same with my philosophy with the draft. It's the same my philosophy of signing free agents. It's like I need to see it on the field before I'm starting to feel better. Because to me, again, that was the most frustrating thing about this defense was the fact that teams could run on us, and that put us in bad situations. And I think if you're in better situations, I think, again, if it's 3rd and 9, it's easier to rush the passer than it is 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 3. And if you can rush the passer, it makes the back end of the secondary better as well. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I think they've made moves to improve the run defense, but I think I have to see it first.
That about covers the defense. I'm not going to get into a quarterback thing. Are you cool with that? Like, I just don't feel the need to talk about Daniel Jones in this depth chart scenario. He got his deal.
He got his deal. Well, the only thing I will say is, are you happy that Tyrod Taylor is back?
And he was on a 2-year deal.
Yeah, but I mean, are you still comfortable with him being the backup quarterback?
For this year, yeah, I guess so. I think you need somebody that can run the exact same offense, and while Tyrod Taylor is not a burner, he can move. I think he can run this offense to some extent. I don't know that there was a better option for that. Like, it's kind of weird how the NFL is like accepting more of these quarterbacks that are a little bit more free to run. Because for the longest time, it felt like colleges produced only those guys, but they didn't translate to the NFL. But they're still not like what are the other backup quarterbacks that can run a true dual threat offense like that? That's not a starter. Taysom Hill, I don't want that.
No. That guy's a runner who can throw, who plays quarterback. I don't
that guy's
feel like
just an athlete. That guy's like the guy from Germany
Yeah.
that's like an all German player, and then he comes here and he does it all because he was the only one with any talent there.
I guess my thing though is that, and this was my criticism of him last year, is I felt like he was playing for his next job as opposed to being a backup quarterback for this team.
I don't know, man. He's kind of old at this point. He should be beyond that.
Well, he should be, but I didn't get the sense watching him when he had to play do that.
Yeah,
and my philosophy with do you want your backup quarterback to run the true offense that you're doing right now, or is there something where you have to be cautious because if he goes down, then you're really screwed? So do I want him to be as much?
No, I don't care about that. I'm never going to plan for a scenario in which my backup quarterback is now down. At that point, to me, the best backup quarterback in the NFL is most likely a failed starting quarterback. You're never going to find a third quarterback that is somehow on that level. So.
No. That's my point, is that do I want my backup quarterback running the offense exactly the way my starting quarterback does? And if there's a lot of dual threatness to him, do I really want him running as much to increase the chance he gets hurt? To me, the backup quarterback is my safety net. He's okay, I may have to sacrifice what I normally do, but I know he can be effective throwing the ball. He's smart. He doesn't put himself in a position where he could go down, because if he goes down, the season's over. And I don't feel with him, I don't think he's got that mindset of thinking that I am truly a backup quarterback. I think he thinks he's a starting quarterback who's buying time until he gets one more shot to start. And then when he's on the field, he's trying to prove that he's a starting quarterback.
Well, I would say that's a fair criticism of him. I don't know that I saw that, but if that's what you saw and interpreted, then I would be just as concerned.
Mm.
As far as I think you run your offense, and I don't think if you are. Here's the thing: you're either playing your backup quarterback to win the game for the 2 or 3 games that your starter is out, for him to take over, right?
Right.
Or I at no point am I like, well, the starter's out for 7 games. It's all on you, Tyrod Taylor. You know what I mean? At that point, if your starter's out for 7 games, there are maybe 3 teams in the league that are good enough as
Right.
a team, as a roster, that they can win anyway,
And the
right?
Giants are not one of
The
those
Giants aren't one of them, so I'm not really worried about that. So I think you run your offense as the way it is designed to be run. And you know what? If Tyrod Taylor is done and he gets smoked on some play and that's it, and now you're down to your 3rd quarterback for the next 3 games, so be it, man. I mean, you probably weren't winning 4 games with Tyrod Taylor anyway. You were probably hoping at best to go 2-2, depending on the matchups.
All right,
So
that's fair.
that's
Fair.
just kind of the way I view it. I don't think your way is necessarily wrong. I think it's a difference in philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think based on where the Giants are as a team right now, it doesn't make sense to be worrying about, how. I don't
Yeah.
think that they're like good enough to just run a different offense and continue to win for 4 games while Daniel Jones is out.
Yeah, I guess like maybe I'm splitting hairs a little bit, or it's just my perception that I felt like Tyrod Taylor, when he was playing, was trying to audition for another job, as opposed to running the offense that we normally were running it. And that's just the sense I got from him.
Yeah, I mean, if I would, if I had that feeling, I would have the same feelings as you. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Right.
That's
Gotcha.
a very Yogi Berra fucking thing to say.
No.
If I felt the same as you, we'd have the same feelings. But that being said,
I'm not going to stay up at night worrying about what Tyrod Taylor does. If he happens to come in a game, that's not a major concern of mine. It's just an observation that I don't know if he's the perfect. I don't know if he's got the headspace of what I want for a backup quarterback. That's all.
well, I would think that this is the last year he'll be on the roster anyway. So,
I would think so. Yeah.
running back though, give me your thoughts on the Barkley thing.
Yeah, we've kind of danced around it. We didn't want to talk really, but now this is kind of a good place in considering it's getting into the dog days of summer. So we know there is a deadline for when he can sign a long-term deal, since he has been tendered a franchise tag. He has until July 17th, I believe, is the date. And if he doesn't, he cannot sign one until the end of the regular season. So the question there is kind of there is a deadline to get a deal done. If not, his options are sign the franchise tag or don't play. And I very highly doubt he's going to not play. So the question becomes, are they going to get a deal done? And I have a kind of a contrarian thought, other than most Giant fans, that I kind of rather would him just play on the tag for another year and play it year to year with him. Not because I don't like Saquon Barkley, not because I don't think he's fantastic. I just don't know how much I want to spend on a running back who will be closer to 30 than 20 by the time a long-term deal ends. I That's just my philosophical feeling about running backs, and especially someone that's had a major injury and gets banged up more than you hope for. So I'm kind of almost rooting for the tag on him, and let's play it year by year and see what happens. Your thoughts?
I think that's fine. I think that. Well, I mean, like, here's the deal. The Giants offered him reportedly a 2-year deal in the middle of the year last year, worth $12.5 million. He said no, and now here we are. I'm sure that for him, that feels like a real kick in the nuts. That being said, I don't see what leverage he has. You have, on one hand, Kayvon Thibodeau talking to the press and pointing out people like Daniel Jones and Jalen Hyatt and a bunch of other people, according to reports, saying it looks like practice is still going on. This is all guys that just want to get better, choosing to stay on the field. And if that deadline comes and a player like him decides I'm worth more than $10 million and doesn't do anything, I think that's bad optics for him. And in the long run, maybe him sitting out is more attractive to potential teams in the following year as a guy who's had a full year removed from contact and whatever, right? That might be the case, but I still don't necessarily think that gets him anything more than a 1-year deal on the open market.
Let me ask you a question. How much money is the tag for him?
$10 million.
He is never going to recoup that $10 million if he sits out this year.
That's kind of how I feel.
So to me, if he thinks he's going to chase that money back, he has to have a contract that's so extraordinary from a guy that sat out a year. He'll never recoup it. So I think, that might be the play that his agents might say, but at the end of the day, he's not leaving that money on the table with the complete unknown of what he may or may not get on an open market that he and probably more likely his agents severely miscalculated. So I think the Giants have all the leverage in this thing. I think
I agree.
The bluff of a holdout after, not signing the day, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been prepared to really, really, really get into this. But then they signed Dexter Lawrence. And once they did that, I think they had all the power at that point. There's really nobody else they need to worry about locking up. Nobody else factors into the Saquon Barkley thing except Barkley himself.
And if you ask me, I'd rather have Daniel Jones. I'd rather have Dexter Lawrence. I'd rather have those guys locked up long term than a running back. And again, I may have a different perspective because I am not a star fucker. I am not an idol worshiper. I know a lot of people want to say, they love Saquon. Saquon Barkley's their guy. He's the face of their franchise. I don't buy into faces of franchises. I never have. As I'm getting older, to me, it's all about winning. I mean, look, I'm 50 years old. At some point, I got to start seeing wins for things. I'm not worried about, I got my entire life ahead of me for winning and stuff. So as I get older and older, I focus more and more about, the uniform than I do necessarily the individuals that are in it. So none of that stuff matters to me, whether he's my guy or my idol or the face of my franchise or, the guy who's the endorsement or the guy who's going to get me on Monday Night Football. To me, it's all about what is the best opportunity for a team to win. And to me, it's allocation of resources under the cap. And I just don't see, putting that much on a guy, on a running back when this league is turning into more and more of a passing league. That's how I feel.
I honestly think that the Giants want him for a brief window and nothing more. And they were willing to go for 2 years. I think they are still willing to go for 2 years. But I think they're also understanding that he might only have 1 year that's useful to them. And they're prepared to just deal with that. So if he decides he's going to sit, they're only really out. I mean, yeah, that sucks. It sets him back, but only 1 year. He was never going to be part of their 4-year plan. So all that does is it tanks this year and makes him look like an asshole. That's kind of the way I think it falls. Right?
And something, tank the year. I mean, this offense is being designed to be more about Daniel Jones and what he can do and throwing to, a stable of receivers. They're getting a lot faster. They invested a lot in Waller and Daniel Bellinger is getting better. More two tight end sets, and they did a high draft pick in Jalen Hyatt. That's what the future of this team is headed towards. It's not towards a monolithic guy who's going to run the ball 25, 30 times a game, and then they're going to throw to him 8 or 9 times also. It's more about distributing among different guys. So what people's perception of his value on this team and what the perception what this offense really is not, I don't think, what reality is going to be.
Over time. I don't know. I think it's foolish to be like, well, Barkley's just not that important. And I know you didn't say that. I didn't say you said that. Yeah. But I do think people are very whatever about Barkley returning. And in a certain sense, they're just like, well, you know what? It's Daniel Jones time, and he's got the money, and, you know, whatever. And it's like there is a nuance to Barkley is important to their current plan and also not part of their long-term plan because he is a running back who is getting up there in age, who will be 28 by the time that 2-year deal they offered and was denied would end. So I you know, it's one of those things that for right now it would fuck them up, but long term it is what it is, and I think they'll just be like, all right, whatever. And also, I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going to sign the tag.
I think he is too. Yeah, and I was completely okay with him signing the tag. Also, you know,
I know people are like, "Oh, he can't play on the tag." Yes, you can. Yes, you can. This is like a new thing that happened in like the last 10 years, where players are like, "I can't play on the tag." Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Hey, players play in the last year of their contract all the time.
All the time. It's the same thing.
And let's be blunt. Everybody's potentially in the last year of a contract because you can get cut. And then you're back to square one. I mean, it happens all the time in this league. Guys that, you know, you hear having signed these huge contracts and all of a sudden they're on their ass in 2 years or 3 years. I mean, you know, Leonard Williams signed this huge contract. It was a story for a whole year, and we're already 2 years later talking about renegotiating or will they cut him? And then did he ever get the full value of that contract? Nope. So I don't understand why the tag is so much different, or the last year of a deal before going into free agency. People play in the last year all the time.
Yeah, I don't care about this anymore. I think we said it.
Yep.
He's back. It's fine. I'm not worried about a lot with tight end. I think Darren Waller adds in something interesting. I think Daniel Bellinger was already pretty good.
Any concerns about Waller being healthy?
No.
Staying healthy?
No.
Okay.
What's your take on how long he's here anyway?
2 years.
Yeah. That's kind of it for me. So, no. I mean, if they had signed him to some like 3-year with a 4th year possible, I'd be worried about it.
I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I think I'm looking at it as like he's being counted on to probably be our most targeted receiver this year, someone the most targets Daniel Jones will be throwing to. And we don't have a true number one wide receiver, and we're going to talk about wide receivers in a second, but I'm a little worried that if he has another injury or something and he's unavailable again, we have a lot of 2s and we don't have a 1. So that's where my little I'm not going to be staying up all night in June worrying about it, but that's definitely going to be a little bit of a concern for me as I go into the season, that I hope he's healthy for, 15 games this year.
Yeah, I mean, but it's one of those things where it's like, can you say that about Daniel Jones? Can you say that about Leonard Williams? Can you say that about Adoree Jackson? Yes. They are thin in a lot of spots, but also they were thin at tight end last year with just Bellinger, were they not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
they were able to get something. I know that he was never going to be getting the most targets, whatever.
Yeah,
but
his role's different. I think that's what makes that's more of a spotlight.
Yes, but I think as a roster, they don't have the depth anywhere where you can't feel that way about like 7 different guys. I mean, right? Like if Adoree Jackson goes down, are we not pretty much just as fucked as we were last year?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of the same thing, and I would say depending more on Adoree Jackson than we are on Darren Waller.
I mean, we probably able to get Waller for the deal that we got because of the injury history and concerns, I guess. But again, that risk does, some guys are more prone to get injured than others, I guess.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. Darren Waller is going to get most of the targets this year based on everything we expect. And then they also have like 12 wide receivers that are fighting for about 5 or 6 spots.
Yeah, let's talk about that because, again, I think we have a very solid collection of 2s and 3s. And
Yeah, well, I mean, leaving off the list, 5 guys that are going to be competing in the fourth quarter of preseason games, they have Isaiah Hodgins, Jalen Hyatt, Wandale Robinson, Paris Campbell, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Bryce Ford Wheaton, Colin Johnson, and Jamison Crowder. Now, I named all of those guys because I do think that they are either, well, I don't even think, they're either guys who have been impressing and impressed this coaching staff, or they're guys that were brought in this year. All of them. That's a lot of names I just said. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys I just listed.
The overall quality has certainly gone up. And there are not guys like literally off the street who are being pressed into service anymore. And that is, you know, we're talking about, Daniel Jones needs weapons and stuff. He's got solid depth to work with. The question is going to be at the top end, is it good enough?
So we're going to go through those names one by one. Give me a 2-second thought on each of them.
Okay.
Isaiah Hodgins.
I hope lightning strikes in the bottle again.
Jalen Hyatt.
I think he's a bit of a project, but I think he'll be a very solid receiver. But I wouldn't expect a ton from him right away.
Wandale Robinson.
I want to see that he is healthy.
Yeah, but come on, say more than that. Say something about him as a receiver, not how healthy he is.
I think he's going to be, the little gadget guy who does lots of little things for us. I'm excited about him being healthy.
Paris Campbell.
I don't know. I don't know about Paris Campbell. I'm going to say to be determined.
Interesting. Darius Slayton.
Darius Slayton. I have a love-hate relationship with Darius Slayton, I guess. I was one of those guys last year that didn't feel bad when he was not going to be on the roster. And I still will cringe every time there's a deep ball thrown to him. Will he catch it or not? I'm glad that this wide receiver room is better than I have to rely on him so much.
Okay. Sterling Shepard.
Anything I get out of him will be a bonus.
Bryce Ford Wheaton. No, you don't know shit about him.
Right? Don't have an opinion on him.
They spent a lot of money on him for an undrafted free agent. I'll say that.
Okay.
Colin Johnson.
Colin Johnson. I think he'll be a victim of the numbers game.
Mm-hmm. And Jamison Crowder.
I don't figure he is going to be in that top tier receivers. I don't know if he's have any impact.
Yeah, he was only included in this list because he was an offseason acquisition. So when I look at this, I think Isaiah Hodgins is a lock for this team. I think he's a smooth route runner, despite not being fast or even necessarily quick, gets just open and has pretty sure hands.
Yeah, my comment about him was that, it seemed like it was kind of out of nowhere. All of a sudden he was like our best receiver, and can he be that productive again? It's just something where, circumstance where he all of a sudden was making plays, or is that just, I'm hoping he is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think he's a pretty solid lock with the rapport he has and his understanding of the playbook. And I think, frankly, just speaks to how hard of a worker he is, being brought in mid-season and just going. I think that he's probably poised for a productive role in this offense. Jalen Hyatt, I don't know. I think he might be a little gadgety to start as a rookie.
Right. That's what I was saying. I think, we've already covered, his time at Tennessee and what kind of offense they had where, it was just be fast, and beat guys that are, you have more talent than in the college level. I think he's going to take a little bit for him to learn how to be a receiver in this league. So year one, game one, month one, we may not expect what we might see out of him in year 2 or year 3.
Wandale Robinson's interesting because I think that he can fill that Richie James role really well in addition to doing other stuff. I mean, and that being shifty and being able to find just the right soft spots and get open, and
Yeah.
then just convert from there. I mean, that's Richie James was good at being that 3rd and 5 guy, 3rd
Sure.
and 4 guy. In addition to that, I think Wan'Dale brings something from like the screen game and like the scat sort of situation where he can be somewhere behind the line of scrimmage and make something out of nothing.
He might have more variation in his game than like a Kadarius Toney, but doesn't have the skill set of a Kadarius Toney. Like he might do a little more than Kadarius Toney could have done, but just not as well at the things that he does do.
Something
that makes
like
sense.
That. Yeah, kinda.
Yeah.
Darius Slayton is here. I mean, what's interesting is he would be on my short list of guys like, well, I don't know if he's going to make the roster. But based on the contract, they spend more money cutting him than keeping him. So I just don't see a way that they just let him go. He would have to have a colossally bad situation.
I mean, him and Daniel Jones are the two guys that had to win over this coaching staff, and
Yep.
they did.
Yep. I mean, you said it. He was the leading receiver last year.
Yeah. From a guy that was
Shepard is interesting. And you said something, anything I get from him is a bonus. I find that interesting because Wan'Dale Robinson is the guy who got hurt later. Sterling Shepard, I would say, probably had a minor tear of the ACL in that he said that he felt like he tweaked it the play before, and then the moment we saw him limping, he was just kind of walking and just kind of dragged his toe. And I guess that's kind of where the pop happened. But I get the feeling that he is probably okay now, good to go. And I think also fans, because the team won just fine kind of after he was here, that he's probably the best route run. He's probably the best receiver on this team right now. Who is better than him?
No, nobody. And that's one of the things I'm a little, the ceiling of this receiving crew is what kind of worries me more than anything. There's no pure number one. There's no stud.
Yeah,
I mean, decent guys.
That's definitely true. But when I look at it, people just writing off Sterling Shepard, and I'm not saying you did, but I think people are. I just find that interesting. Like, why you suddenly think that he is just so terrible because he got hurt a lot? I mean, like,
oh yeah, you're talking about people. I didn't say that.
Not you.
Yeah,
people just like let it go. Like they just like, yeah, I mean, he's hurt all the time. They need to just let his ass go. I saw somebody write, and this is like peak stupid. Don't pay attention to this. Somebody wrote, it's like he's been stealing money from this team for forever. Like as if getting your ACL torn is like this a voluntary thing.
All right, then Saquon Barkley has been stealing, and all these other guys that got hurt have been stealing. That's stupid.
It's very, very stupid. But yeah, there's this general idea, I think, since the team won without Shepard, that he's like this expendable piece. I think he's probably the most complete and best wide receiver on the team.
No, the reason I said that is he's gonna be 30 this year. I mean, and that's a serious injury, and I want to see
Yeah, no, I mean, I get that.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't be shocked to see him emerge from like, oh, he's earning starting team reps and he's always open. How about that? Because he's one of those guys too, where it's like, yeah, he's kind of like that small shifty guy, but you look at that Titans game, he was the big play that got them back in that game.
Yeah,
he was the deep ball.
Yeah, I would say I'm still sticking with my thing. If it wouldn't shock me if that happens, but I'm also be pleasantly surprised if it does.
Yeah.
It's in that little soft spot of the two.
Sure. The other
I'm hoping for it. I mean, if he's healthy, I absolutely will. I want him to be one of the wide receiver ones on this team, one of the starters. I would sleep better at night knowing he was one, knowing he had a full bill of health and he's playing pre-injury. I have no problem with that.
I am not really sure what to make of the Bryce Ford Wheaton thing, especially. I mean, I'm not super stoked on him, and I think honestly, him and Colin Johnson kind of come down to the same guy, and someone's gonna have to win. Colin Johnson's obviously older, but he was a guy that was earning a lot of reps last year early with this coaching staff and doing a lot. From all the reports that we were reading, was doing a lot with them. He was catching everything thrown his way. He looked crisp. He looked good. He was getting open, and then he got hurt. So far this year, I'm continuing to see his name pop up as a guy who looks crisp. He looks open. He catches everything his way. if he can make it to the preseason and really show the coaching staff what he can do in game situations, I do think that he is a dark horse to make the back end of the roster. And I don't think this coaching staff really cares about name or anything like that. I think they want the best group of guys.
I definitely don't think they care about it. Let's talk. The one guy I really had no opinion on was Paris Campbell. What's your take on him?
Paris Campbell's interesting because they spent a lot of money on him. I mean, they didn't. They didn't spend a lot of money at all. But in comparison to the wide receiver room, he's a $5 million hit. That's like the highest. He also carries a $3 million dead hit as well. So cutting him, they do save like $2 million if they need to. But
I don't think they're going to cut him. I just what is your opinion of him though?
I think that he is going to be able to add something to this offense that they don't. I don't know. I honestly think that Paris Campbell is sort of their Sterling Shepard replacement. They're the best they can do to do that.
Okay.
For cheap. And I think that's what makes it really, really interesting with that is how many guys that are speedy, shifty are you going to carry? I think he makes this team, but it's like a gamble. Like he could fall apart in the preseason. He may do nothing this year. He was a gamble signing. I want him to do well, so it's hard for me to like really speak it.
Listen, I don't like Darius Slayton, but I want him to do well too. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of
I think Paris Campbell is going to be that thing. He's going to be like that fourth wide receiver, I think, that comes in and has like cleanup duties where he's like carving guys up but getting favorable coverage, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of like, I really don't have much of an opinion about him because like I really wasn't sure what his role would be on this.
Again, so this is the thing with OTAs and talking about this stuff. Like we're talking about depth chart, but now we're talking about role in the team, and I think that with defensive backs and with wide receivers, it's kind of all in how they line up. And we don't have any access to how they're being lined up, how they envision these guys. So these are all just like very
thumb in the wind.
Yeah, it's just this is all projection on our part where it's like I could see basically I'll narrow it down. I'll take Jamison Crowder off the list. And from Hodgins, Hyatt, Robinson, Campbell, Slayton, Shepard, Ford, Wheaton, and Johnson, I could foresee any of them on the roster. Those guys, I think. Any of those guys could make the roster. Not all of them, because that's 8 wide receivers. So you're probably looking at most, 6 wide receivers and a guy who's a wide receiver that's signed just for special team duties.
And I can see
7, and that's insane.
And I can see 4 to 5 of them legitimately being the starters, and me not being like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's no David Sills in this group who's like,
Well, I didn't have him in the group. He's on the roster, but he's in the other group I didn't mention.
Right. But I mean, like, there's nobody in that list who's like him. It's just like, this guy's obviously has no chance to be a starter based on the depth of the room. Like, so any of those guys could be. You could tell me that any combination of them are 3 starters on opening day, and it'd be like, all right, it's fine.
I think that you could there's a potential for Ford Wheaton to be in that group only because we don't know what we have there. Mm-hmm. We don't know what we've seen. But what I've seen from Colin Johnson, I think he shows that on some NFL team, he can get open, make catches, and do something with it. Not obviously, we're not talking about 85-yard to the house, but
right. I'm glad that the depth in this room has gotten better. That now we have a.
But just like we said with the edge room, like there's no. We want to see somebody like Darius Slayton put them over the top or outperform himself or whatever, right? We want to see Jalen Hyatt evolve from whatever he was at Tennessee to a real NFL wide receiver. Just like we want to see Kayvon Thibodeau at edge and Azeez Ojulari at edge elevate themselves. But right now, when I look at the roster for both edge and wide receiver, I'm not seeing a top dog.
Nope.
And while I think both of those positions you can win by numbers, I would like to see a top dog. One of them would make me very happy.
I want somebody where there's no wide receiver on this roster that you have to specifically game plan to stop. We're stopping this guy. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I would say so.
it's more about we're going to run our defense, and we know there's going to be guys out there, but there's no like, Terrell Owens or Jerry Rice out there that's like, we have to spend Tuesday night staying up till 5 in the morning for how we're going to stop this guy.
Right. Yeah, there's certainly not that. I mean, I'm sure some people would say that Waller or I mean, maybe to an extent Barkley might be that guy.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the wide receiver room specifically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I meant as receiving weapons, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
the wide receiver room, if you're an outside corner, if you're Trayvon Diggs, you're not worried about Darren Waller because you're not
How
covering
am I
him.
going to formulate the game plan for my secondary worrying about these guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That pretty much does it for this episode. I don't really have anything else. OTAs
Yeah, I gotta talk about the offensive line real fast, or
I don't really have any. I mean, we've talked about it ad nauseum, the guards, but we can't see anything in OTAs with the offensive line. So I'm not.
Yeah.
Right now we're talking about John Michael Schmidt's a guy that we're just projecting. I think probably is going to be pretty good. We know Glowinski's not good, but we still have. I mean, they're going to move guys around. I have no idea right now today.
Yeah.
I don't even know who the starters are. So I don't. Guard, I think maybe there's some depth issues, but are you really truly like that's going to be the fucking problem?
Not like it had for the last decade. No.
Yeah. I mean, if we're going to talk offensive line, I would say my biggest concern is tackle depth between Tyree Phillips, who I thought played pretty well but is not spectacular, and Matt Parrott, who is all measurables and no film. I think, and we last episode we talked about Yanni Kajus. They brought him in.
I feel like
Gone as soon as we talked about it. The next day he signed with the Jets. So
I feel like Matt Parrott's been something we've been talking about for 7 years. Like, this experiment. This is what, his 4th year, 3rd year.
It's 4th year, I think, because it's the same as Andrew Thomas.
Yeah, he was the 2020 draft, but like we knew he was going to be a major project when he was drafted, right?
Sure, yeah.
So it's kind of he's a weird, interesting guy where it's just like we knew it was going to take a few years. Injuries hurt, but again, we're also talking about a backup at this point too. So
yeah, but I mean, it's one of the most important backup positions in the NFL is
for sure
tackle.
For sure.
I would say that's my biggest area of concern on the offensive line right now. Just looking at it right now, before I know who's starting and doing what, and how Azudu is coming along, and all that other stuff. And that's sort of one of those things, right, where it's like, oh, your left tackle went down. I mean, most teams' seasons are over, right?
Yeah.
So,
or he goes on life support. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a concern for me. I would like them to get better with depth at tackle, but it's not one of those things right now they have other issues where it's like, well, we kind of need a starter at it. You know what I mean? So.
Yep.
I don't know. Is there anything I'm missing with that?
No, I mean special teams. We can't really tell during OTAs, but I mean like just as concerns going into the year. Is there anything that you're?
Any other concerns going into the year? Yeah, I mean, I think generally that my main concern is that we will be complaining about the same things this year that we had to complain about last year, and that the pass rush still isn't getting there, and there still don't seem to be the big chunk plays. That would be my concern, and I think they've done things to address it. Like they certainly added speed all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like the concept still has to be there. They still have to be looking downfield. They still have to be throwing downfield to get those chunk plays. They still need the protection to hold up so that they can do that. And as far as generating pressure, like guys like Aziz and Kayvon need to get home. Like they have to be able to get pressure without bringing 6 guys on every play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And
right.
I think my main concern is coming off of a year where you had clear success. Not just out-cooking your coverage, but clear success. From a coaching standpoint, they had an advantage. They were able to make Daniel Jones into a winner, help him become a winner. And in spite of all that, there were clear things that were problems. And if we have the same problems again this year, there will be, even myself will be victim to, like, we didn't do enough. We still haven't fixed this, because it's the same things that we've been complaining about for forever. So this feeling of, well, wins are cool, but we're still bad at these things is something that the fan base will be frustrating with.
I want a win-loss record to really be accurately reflecting how good this team is. I don't want any, well, they won 10 games, but I want this team to be, this is a 10-win team. Strength of schedule doesn't matter as much. This lucky break didn't happen matter as much. I want this team to be at a place where their record is what they are, and not smoke and mirrory or bad luck where they are better than what their record was. I want the record to be
6-1 team. You don't want to be that.
Yeah, no, well, I'd rather be the worst 6-1 than the best 1-6 for sure. But yeah, I don't want any narratives or any perception to be we are X record, but that was because of this, not because of what we are.
I get you. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm hoping that we get some more news, some more interesting things from next episode from the OTAs that are going on. By the time we record next Monday, there will have been OTAs on June 6th, which is the day you're listening to this, June 8th, June 9th. And then the day that we air that, which will be Tuesday the 13th, the mandatory minicamp will be happening. And obviously all eyes are going to be on who shows up to that. Barkley being the main one. I doubt he'll be there, right?
The biggest news I don't want to hear today, and I don't want to hear at the mini camp, is I don't want to hear anybody with a non-contact injury and is out for the year.
Very true. Yeah.
Something really, if you give me the choice between absolutely no news or, news, I'll take the no news, because no news to me means nothing bad happened.
You're 100% right. This is the time you should be enjoying your vacations, and we're not talking about arrests.
Arrests, or how are we going to handle having player X out for the year because he got hurt.
Right. So with that, hopefully we'll continue to have boring episodes next week. I don't know how to sell our show like that.
If the three of you are still listening to this episode, thank you for your support.
Next week, hopefully we'll be delivering more boring takes. Nothing hot. Nothing.
Hey, these guys are catching passes in air. We're kind of podcasting with
to air
against air right now too.
Yeah. So it's OTAs for all of us. These are organized team activities for you and me.
That's right. Remember, in November we have all of our big takes after a big win or a big loss. You'll remember we were in this together.
We were with us back that shit.
Yeah.
All right, so we will see you guys, of course, on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, etc., YouTube as well next week. And you can follow us on Twitter in the interim, at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan, at JustGiantsPod. And we'll see you all next week. Till then, go Giants.
Go Giants.